Hello friends! With the Procreate 5.4 update, there are now even more incredible default brushes to choose from, and we're going to explore some of them. In this video, I'm going to test the Gadsby brush. To find this brush, head to the new Procreate library, open up the Gouache set, then find Gadsby. I haven't made any changes to this brush in the Brush Studio, and I will be using it exactly as it was installed. Also, I have my canvas set to 3000 pixels square at 300 dpi. To start out, let's take a look at the brush behaviors. We're going to start with a couple stroke tests at a small, medium, and large size. Now at the smallest size, there's slightly rough edges along the stroke. And then that texture is a lot looser along the edges of the medium stroke. And at this size, you also start to see some subtle brush stroke texture as well. At the largest size, you've got some areas where the color is really dense. And then in some areas, you see a little bit more value shifting and more of that brush stroke texture. And you see that loose texture along the edges as well. There's not much pressure sensitivity here. I mean, there is a very slight increase in the stroke size when I applied more pressure, but it's really not that visible. And there's no change in value. The color remains consistent whether you're using light pressure or more pressure. Now, the preview image for this brush does show that it has a taper on both ends, but the taper is much more obvious at the end of the stroke versus the beginning. Yeah, for whatever reason, I'm only seeing that taper towards the end of a stroke. Now I'm going to paint a few color swatches to test the opacity. And clearly this is a high opacity brush. Now in some areas you will see a darker color show through here and there. So it's not 100% opaque, but it is very close. I should be able to get some good coverage quite easily with this brush, even if it means adding an extra stroke or two. All right, let's see what happens when I change my grip and use the side of the pencil. So you get a slightly lighter color and a lot more texture. It's a little more scratchy looking, as if you're using a dry brush. Okay, now I'm going to long press on the smudge tool so it also switches to Gadsby. And let's see what that does. Okay, so it really kind of just pushes the color around. So you can use it to kind of push pigment from one color to another. And let's see. Okay, so here I'm just kind of pressing and holding, and it's kind of blooming a little bit. And here, if I use it kind of at the edge of a color, it's kind of like adding more water to the mix. If you'd like to use this same process for testing your brushes at home, I made a brush testing worksheet for you. There's a link in the description for the free download. Now let's put this to the test with a painting. I'm starting with a quick pencil sketch. In case you're curious, I'm using the 6B pencil from the Classic library, which is still my favorite sketching brush. I cannot let it go. Now for painting, I have seen gouache artists start with a watery wash for the base, then build their way up to more opaque paint. So I'm going to give something like that a try. I'm starting with the lightest color. Then I'll define each of these segments with a brighter color. And now I've switched to the smudge tool, and I'm going to blend each of those segments. Like we discovered in the brush behaviors test, I can just kind of push that color around until I get the look of a watery blend. I'll do the same thing with a couple darker shades to help define those little segments. I'm adding an even deeper color in some areas for shadow. I won't blend these parts though. I'll leave these more defined. Just adding another mid-tone color to some of these sections. All right, I'm going to switch gears for a second and get the stem painted. as well as the leaves. I'm starting the leaves with a light base color, then I'll add a mid-tone, then a darker color for the shadows. And I think I'll blend this a little. Okay, now I'm going to try building up more opaque layers. I've got my pencil tilted slightly, and it's giving me some nice broad strokes with more of that dry brush texture. I'm adding several different pinks, one layer after another, and I'm keeping my strokes light and using very little pressure so that the texture comes through. I've dropped my pencil size down now so I can get a little more precise with the strokes for these shadows. All right, here's the finished piece. In my opinion, Gadsby is a much better option for digital gouache, much better than the Night Heron brush, which I tested a few weeks ago. This brush felt smooth and creamy, and it was flexible enough to create both the look of a transparent wash and the look of layered opaque paint, which is kind of what you expect from a gouache brush. The colors were nice and vibrant, and the brush has a nice range in size, so it was easy to cover large areas as well as get into the smaller details. So it's a thumbs up for me. I really like this one. What are your thoughts? Do you think this is a better gouache brush than Night Heron? Let me know in the comments. If you'd like to see more from this brush review series, there's a link to the playlist in the description. And if you enjoyed this video, I'd love it if you'd give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. Thanks for watching.